Good morning, good morning. I made sure my mic works today. Wait, let me go ahead and get it shared with the group really quick. All right, stream has been shared. Good morning, everybody. Sorry if I sound tired. I literally couldn't sleep last night just because of sort of all the good news happening. Wow, Fluence is going nuts. Must have had their earnings. We have shares in this at $8 or $5 or $8, something like that. Okay, so I want to kind of go over what I'm looking at for the day. Just give me a second though. So the main thing I want to look at when the market opens today is the HIG. And the main reason why we want to look at the HIG is because we have a ton of bullish structure. Okay, we've closed this cup to the 833. We did have a pretty large candle this morning to the 8034, which surprisingly is showing not higher than the other one. Um, but that doesn't matter too much. What does matter is that this is the cup, and from that nested cup, nested being a cup within a cup, we are now looking for an additional handle to take us up to basically the next level of liquidity. So for the high yield corporate bonds, it looks super good. We should be seeing quite a bit of buying in that today, which means that we will be seeing buying in the overall equities. Now, one position I'm looking at really pretty deeply here, and give me just 1 second. Good morning, everybody. Sorry, I just need to drink some water. Okay, so what I'm looking at for semiconductors is that today is a super bullish day. Okay, when we had the news in the morning, we saw semiconductors go all the way from the 501 up to the 509. Okay. Now, one thing that I am looking at here is that we did have this very nice cup built here. Now, so far, I just want to turn off the Bollingers just to make sure. We have had this cup fully invalidated, this current one anyway. But this kind of sets us up in a really nice setup, sort of like yesterday, where we had that tricky double top, which was the handle to the upside. Now, one reason why I'm still looking at that as the handle to the upside, and let me go ahead and delete some of the stuff from yesterday, is that we completed this very nice cup. Okay, now it might look like this is an exaggerated handle compared to this, but this is still all within the liquidity, and especially this being the after hours slash pre-market, um, this is perfectly fine for a handle to the downside or to the upside. So what we're looking for is that basically this range needs to be protected. So if we start breaking down below this range too much further, then potentially we could see the full collapse downward, see that double top really play out, then we close the inverse cup to the downside. Now, again, that's not on my expectations for today. It's just something that we have to potentially prepare for just in case. But what I am expecting is that we've seen this liquidity range bounced off of multiple times now. We've seen it bounced during the intraday, which is very, very important. So far, we're seeing a little bit of a bounce in this range. Now, if we can fully bounce off of that channel, then I don't want to look at the upper Bollinger drawings. So yesterday technically was an upper Bollinger day one move, which is saying that today we should be anticipating the upper Bollinger day two. Upper Bollinger day two usually means that there's going to be a higher high. So I am going to write this. Okay, so simple note, and let me go ahead and turn off Bolgers for a second, but simple note here. This way we just have that in mind that today is the day two of the upper Bollinger on semiconductors. So we should be expecting the higher high. The higher high from yesterday would mean we would be pushing above that 507 range. So I really like semiconductor calls today. What I'll be doing is still taking these SOX S puts. Now for SOX S, obviously we're not going to have the opportunity we had yesterday. However, we still have a very, very quality opportunity to take some of these 10 puts for both this week and next week. They should hit extremely well, if we get the price action that I'm assuming we're going to get. Now, semiconductors being down 1% in pre-market, yes, that's a little scary, but I also think that offers us a pretty opportune buying opportunity. Um, Reason why, hourly time frame, we're pushed within the lower Bollinger. Usually when we're in the lower Bollinger on the hourly time frame, and I'm just going to circle a couple of these here. Do apologize for a mess up there, but we will put these in green. Okay, so just pay attention to the green boxes. What happens when semiconductors get to the hourly lower Bollinger? And I think that's a perfectly valid question to ask yourself. Well, they like to fly, that's what they do. And very likely you'll see that, upward push further from there as well. So, okay, let me go ahead and delete some of these boxes. Let me go ahead and take a look at the SPY and everything. Just doing some early planning. I usually try to do this every day because it is very good to plan your days out. That way, when the price action actually starts coming in, you don't have to really worry about things too much. Now for drip, we have a long way to go on the upside. However, with this cup closing and with some of the good news coming in, I mean, yesterday we did have a 12% day. We're already up almost 4% in the pre-market. So, can we be expecting a little bit of bear structure into a handle down, potentially? And from that, that would take us to this next range of liquidity here, which is, you know, very well within that $5 range. So I really like those $5 calls. Um, they're not going to be nearly as cheap on open now, but there's still going to be an opportunity to add a few before they get really expensive. But this should be still a very, very good trade. And again, those are the June, I believe 18th or 19th 5 calls, and the December, whatever the date for December is, 5 calls. So that's what I'm primarily tacking on. Good morning, everybody. Okay, so we got 5 minutes until open. Few other things I want to look at. Just give me 1 second. So oil volatility is pretty much defeated at this point. Now, it's not entirely defeated. There is still going to be a few upticks in oil, very likely, throughout the next few weeks, but it's not to the point where it's going to completely flip the market anymore. Now, one thing we've known since oil has been buying upward is that treasuries, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Treasuries have been absolutely dumping. Um, we did see a lot of equities dumping for quite a while until the ceasefire came out. And we also saw precious metals dumping very, very hard. Now, I said yesterday that adding into silver and gold would be a super, super, super good opportunity. Well, from that point of yesterday, being at the $64, we're already almost up $10 on silver. So we're going to be starting to head back up to the all-time high. And just to really preface this, this is what happened basically until we started getting some of that oil volatility really kicking in. Now, the war obviously didn't start until what, the end of February, right in here, I believe. It's really when it solidified that downside. However, prior to that, and prior to some of the you know messages and everything between Iran and whatnot, um, precious metals were buying up massively. So gold, silver, palladium, platinum are pretty much free money right now. I've been adding shares to GDXY, which is a weekly dividend. From yesterday, I was buying at, you know, 12 something a share. It's currently 13.40 a share. Um, there's another one that someone told me about that pays weekly that has a little higher growth. I want to say it's GDXW if I'm right about that. Not entirely sure, but we'll circle back to it. Now, QQQ, we have 2 minutes till open, so let's just kind of really start rushing. Not rushing. There's the phrase work fast but don't rush. That's what we do around here. We work fast but not rush. So QQQ, we have a very, very awesome cup and handle formed. Now, for QQQ, this is going to be a little tough because with the open here, we're already sitting within this upper Bollinger, which means that that's not the call opportunity. What I think is going to happen is that we're going to see this push upward into this upper Bollinger slightly, and then that's going to give an opportunity for a very, very small short to the 20 mile here. 20 mile is currently at the 696.37, so that's going to pull the handle downward, and from there, that's where we get our full-on breakout. And that's just the expectation anyway. Um, so we will kind of just keep track of that. But overall, that's the expectation on the day, which is why I really want to add into those semiconductor calls. Um, again, the semiconductor calls that I'm taking are going to be SOXS puts. Okay. Those are going to be the 10 puts for this week and next week. That's basically saying that you're buying a call to the upside. Now, with SPY on the 5 minute time frame, we want to see it either push into this lower Bollinger or into the upper Bollinger. but we still have very nice structure built here. We have this cup just waiting to fill to the upside. So we are going to try to pack in some calls if we can get this lower Bollinger push. And let me go ahead and just check positions really quick. All right, doing super good. Now, I want to start looking at the VVIX. Okay. VVIX is a little elevated today. This isn't going to update for another couple minutes for me, even with the 8.4 version. It does take a couple seconds to update, but we will be watching that very closely soon here. Now, one thing we have to contend with on the 5-minute time frame is we do have a small head and shoulders. So again, that could be what will give us our liquidity to the downside to take those calls. So if we can push below the lower Bollinger, which would be below that the 734.70, um, then that will be a very nice call opportunity to the upside today. So I'm waiting for that to take my semiconductor calls and SPY calls. Now for the SPY calls, I'm just going to add to the 736 strike for the 0 DTE. The dated calls, I'll just be continuing to tack into the SOXS 10 puts and the TQQQ puts. So we are seeing the upper Bollinger starting to push on SOXS, which is telling us that that put opportunity is starting to near. Now, semiconductors, this technically is a call opportunity here, so gonna go ahead and engage. Let's see. Okay, I got my calls going, and now we wait. So let's go ahead and check the HIG. Let's go ahead and check liquid. Let's check all of our big dealer instruments. So HIG looking very good. Um, obviously it's been buying upwards since yesterday. That's exactly what we want to see. Sorry if I sound like I'm shivering. It's super, super cold in my room. Same with liquid here. We're seeing a nice bit of buying. So that should be pushing us upward. Now, let's check QQQ. I'll turn off the drawings for a moment. So we did have a pretty large push downward, invalidating that smaller cup here. But so far, they're looking to buy that up. Now, semiconductors, we are seeing the buying so far. On the 5-minute time frame, technically this is already a quality trade. But we're looking a lot further today. We're looking truly for higher highs. That means basically pushing to this 508, 97 range today. So that's truly what we're looking for. Now, VVIX pulling down pretty substantially. I'm going to show the colors on VVIX again just because it's really important to understand. We're still within this kind of consideration range slash cautionary range. This means that we can see both selling and buying within this range. Um, However, we're by the day trying to push down below this 92 range. If we can get below this, or I mean, excuse me, the 90 range, if we can get below this 90 range, that's really going to be telling us that the buying is just absolutely kicking in and picking upward. Usually I look below 92, usually between 88 to 92 is when I'm starting to see the major buying kicking in. Still sitting here in my SPY calls. Now, one thing we do have to contend with is that if they continue pushing downward towards that, basically the 734 almost on the dot, um, this can close a smaller inverse cup. I would still be holding my calls though. Um, I'm still going to hold mine anyway. Oops, I did not mean to move that. Now, I do want to look at the daily levels for a second here, because our 5 miles at the 726. Okay, 726. That means that potentially we head down, drag this right to the 726. That would give us the upper bounds being around that 728, lower bounds around 724. So that's really what we're looking for the day is that the upper Bollinger. Um, let's check the upper Bollinger on the SPY. It's at 737.85. So we will move that to range. 7, 5, roughly in there. Okay, so that's kind of the ranges on the day is that either we're going to be pushing towards the 5 mile or we will be seeing continuation within the buying. Especially with us expecting a higher high out of semiconductors today. Um, I'm much more inclined to look towards that upside. Now we will be looking at the VVIX again and circling back to the HIG. So VVIX has pulled down to the 92.29 for the low of the day so far. Did have a slight tick upward to the 92.82. Okay, so that will coincide with a little bit of selling. And let's check the HIG. HIG is at 80.20, so still buying on the day. Looks a little choppy, but this is considered buying within the HIG. And also, I see a super large share order here in HIG for 308,000 shares of buying. So somebody just bought an absolute boatload of HIG, and that was a minute and a half ago. So um, somebody sees upside in HIG. QQQ having a bounce. That's good. Let's check the SPY again. Let's make sure we're not having our levels invalidated on us or anything crazy. And VVIX at the 90, or excuse me, 92.81. I was gonna say 98 for a second. It's 92.81. Remember it did jump up to the 92, I believe 88. So it actually jumped up all the way to the 93.05. So if we can see the VVIX starting to pull down for, a large majority of the day, if we can start seeing a bounce here, a quality bounce anyway, that'll really complete this cup that we have being built here. And it still hasn't been validated yet, so that is a good thing. Sorry, I haven't been able to check chat yet. I'm in the 736 0DT calls on SPY. Still holding those. I'm still expecting those to pay out very, very well. because again, the range we're targeting here is truly this upper Bollinger. We have to be very careful with the VVIX here because every single penny this goes upward means that a dealer is hedging for downside. So we don't want to be seeing this move up pretty much at all right now. QQQ still buying, so that's adding to our call strength here. That's a good thing. It's a good signal. I apologize if I'm shivering. It's gotta be like 40 degrees in here. Semiconductors still pushing down a little bit. Again, I'm not too concerned about this because even just ignoring all the structure and everything, this would be when I would take on a call position regardless, because I always take calls from the lower Bollinger up to the mid Bollinger or upper Bollinger. So this would be the range that I'd be tacking in calls regardless. So um, I do expect a bounce out of this kind of dangerous liquidity range. Now, SPY, we just gotta make sure that things don't validate on us, which it is looking pretty grim for a moment. BVIX still pulling downward though, 92.72. Let's check the HIG again. And the HIG is back up to the 80.20. I mean, it's definitely hard to say that they're not going to fill this inverse cup, especially when they're literally only about 20 cents away from doing so. Um, it'd be surprising for them not to, but at the same time, we're still within that lower Bollinger range, which gives us the call upside. What they might aim to do here is with this inverse cup, we do expect bullish structure at the bottom, sort of like the exact same for a bullish cup. We expect bearish structure at the top. Um, this would give us upside. Okay. Now, usually that upside would be to pull us further downward. So that's something we will watch for. But with our calls, um, we should be still just fine. So I'm not worried about that. Now, again, this still hasn't fully invalidated um, the upward cup just yet. Hasn't fully finished out this inverse cup either. So if this inverse cup does not finish out, then technically we still have a very valid cup bottom here. Okay. Yes, I'm still holding the SOXS puts from yesterday. And just a reminder, SOXS puts are basically saying that you're taking semiconductor calls. Semiconductors are getting beat up pretty bad right now, but I'm not too concerned about that. VVIX is at the 92.73. And let's circle back to, I want to look at NVIDIA and everything in a couple minutes here, just to look at the structure on that. But I just want to see the prices. Pig still buying upward. Okay, so that's a major signal that dealers are still wanting to see the upside. Now SPY, let's see if we have got our level invalidated yet. We have not. If SPY continues building support here, then um, again, this larger cup is still within play. VVIX at 92.73. SPY is starting to invalidate. Yep, okay, so that upward cup has been invalidated. Now, I'm still going to be holding my calls because we still have this larger cup formed here. We have this cup formed here still, and this still hasn't been invalidated yet. We have a long ways to go on that. So unless dealers are really going to start picking up the selling volume today, um, I'm still going to be targeting the upside. So I will have a bias against that. I do apologize. Now, NVIDIA, we're seeing some good structure. We do have this cup formed, and it has not been invalidated yet at all. Actually, quite a ways before it is invalidated. So what this is looking like is this is going to build a handle to the upside. Okay. We were talking about that 211 range yesterday on NVIDIA. We are still very much within the bounds of that occurring today. Micron, let's take a look at what's going on here. So we do have some bearish structure. Do have a bit of a double top there as well. However, we are also very close. Well, I mean, technically we are at that bottom Bollinger, and we are sharing some of that structure with NVIDIA, where as long as we don't push too much further downward, then this will invalidate some of this bearish structure and it'll allow us to see the upside. Now I want to look at the VVIX. VVIX is at the 92.81, so still just holding that 92.80 range. Liquid still buying upward. Pig having a little bit of a sell, but we'll see if that continues outward or not. Our drip shares are absolutely killing it right now. Eventually this is going to end up squeezing because it was so heavily shorted. Thank you. Okay, and I want to check Microsoft. Microsoft, we have really nice structure on. We've been in this really long consolidation channel for a while though. I'll turn off the Bollingers for a second. That's the cup I was expecting yesterday, but we're starting to form that cup. So that's looking good. Go ahead and check the SPY. Yep, I'm still gonna be still holding my calls here. I'm not worried about downside just yet. VVIX as well, still holding kind of that 92.80 range, which so far is telling me that dealers aren't exactly hedging the downside. They did do a little bit of a hedge on the downside earlier, but so far we're not seeing this app, you know, take a lot of weight. If we start seeing this pushing upward towards the 93, 94, then that'll start telling me, okay, dealers truly just don't want to buy today. We saw semiconductors go all the way to the 493, back up to the 496, almost 497 now. So hopefully this is going to be that buying that we are expecting. QQQ still doing super good. It has not invalidated any of its bullish structure, which for me this is super good to see. This is telling us, almost to a T that we should be expecting pretty large upside today. Nvidia starting to gain its weight back up as well. Remember, we were targeting that 211. I'm gonna write a note here just because. Okay, so just want that note there. Microsoft having a little bit of a sell down, but that's very reasonable with it having a very, very large push upward into the pre-market and open. Pig still not seeing a ton of upside yet, which is a little concerning. Okay, I do want to see the HIG buying upward. And I want to check the SPY 1 minute time frame for a moment. So far, inverse cup has been closed. From that inverse cup closing, again, we should be looking for bullish structure to the upside. Usually that bullish structure to the upside tends to invalidate a lot of these inverse cups. So that is what we are looking for the bullish structure and invalidation of that inverse cup. Now the middle Bollinger, or say middle Bollinger, the 20 MA is at the 734.88. Again, I do have the 736 calls. I am expecting still a lot more weight to be bought up on the day. VVIX moving up very slightly, so not what we want to see, but still not moving up enough to overly concern me just yet. Especially when we've been seeing QQQ pretty much buying up the entire day so far. This is looking very, very, very good. Nvidia starting to buy upward as well, completing a bullish cup here. It's a little hard to see, but we do have a micro bullish cup being completed here. From that cup, expect bearish structure, pull downward into the next level upward. Okay, and we also have completed this smaller cup. So Nvidia looking very bullish. Okay. Um, Obviously having Nvidia being bullish is exactly what we want to see. Now Micron starting to be very bullish here. We talked about as long as it doesn't push down too much further, if it had a major bounce, then this would become very bullish for the market. It hit the 641 on the dot, and now it's already back up to 660. So whole $19 of upside there. SPY starting to gain some weight. Good stuff. Semiconductors starting to gain some weight. We want to see this really pushing back up towards this 508, 509 range, basically claiming all of the selling weight for the day. And VVIX here. Sorry if I sound super tired. I did not sleep at all. VVIX. And VVIX did see a tick downward. So that is exactly what we are looking for here. So far everything is looking very good. Our calls on SPY should absolutely crush it today. Now, again, there's a lot of different ways you can trade these calls. There's a very safe way, which the very safe way is to, again, go from the lower Bollinger to the 20 ma. From the 20 ma, you take profit on, depending on how many contracts you have. If you only have a single contract, then that is the safe way to ensure you're getting your profit on the day. However, today we're expecting a very, very large buy to the upside throughout the market overall. With that said, um, it might be worth holding that call above that 20 mile range on a day like today. Especially if we continue seeing the signals moving in the direction that we're seeing them move. We're seeing a lot of weight being bought upward now. Nvidia is at basically 210. Again, we've been talking about that 211 should hit very nicely. We're seeing the dollar pulling downward, which should give strength to equities for the short term anyway. Do I think the SPY might touch the 731.31 before we bounce? Um, I really don't. I really don't. The reason why, if we do have that move, it's going to invalidate this much larger cup that we basically spent um, a large majority of the day building to get to that cup. Okay. Um, yes, this formed in the overnight. However, it's still a very, very strong cup. And I like strong cups around here. The channel name does imply it. It is one of my favorite structures to trade into. So as long as we're not seeing that cup invalidated, then our upside should be absolutely perfect. DVIX still ticking downward. Sorry if it sounds like I'm shivering. It's because I am. It's insanely cold in my room right now. Now those drip calls that I was read on for about 2 weeks are finally massively green. They're actually up a whole 38% currently. So I'm very happy about that. Check the SPY 1 minute time frame. Okay, so this is good. This is a good thing. We see a very nice cup formed here. With this cup, we should anticipate the handle into further upside. Okay, so that's giving us a lot of strength, telling us that this lower Bollinger entry was very, very strong. Okay, I'm not too worried about that heading down and invalidating. It might though, but if it does, we'll contend with it. BVIX still looking very, very good. And I want to look at the HIG. HIG selling off a little bit, um, but I also see another massive share buy in here as well. 247,000 shares. So that there was a 308,000 share purchase today and also this 246 or 247,000 share purchase. Um, that's a lot of buying compared to I'm not really seeing major sells. So we'll be watching the price, but I do expect the HIG to start buying upward. And let's circle back to semiconductors and everything. semiconductors sharing that same structure with SPY right now. Build the cup, and from that cup, we are now building the handle towards the upside. So that's what I'm looking for currently. And during this all, I do want to be seeing the VVIX moving downward. So yes, it's at 92.59. We want to continue seeing this pull downward, basically below this 92 range today. And we want to be seeing the HIG buying upward. Now, I have seen some large share buys on the HIG today. Again, there was close to what, 500,000 something plus shares bought. Um, that's a lot of major buying from big dealers. So I'm still not seeing massive selling signals on the day so far. Even Microsoft building structure to head upward. Nvidia looks absolutely primed for that. 211. QQQ has still just been blasting off all day long. It's looking very, very likely we're going to complete this bullish cup. At the top of this bullish cup, again, expect some bearish structure to give us the handle into the upside. Okay, so that's what we're seeing out of QQQ, and we also see the invalidation of a much larger head and shoulders. So this has now been invalidated. So we'll go ahead and delete that, but that's another very great signal. Validation of the head and shoulders is what we want. Building the cup, the nested cup, and now the nested handle. Let's look at HIG. HIG's the main concern. Oh, massive, massive share buys in here. Yeah, I'm really expecting the HIG to buy upward today. I'm seeing pretty much nothing but massive share buys on the HIG. So this price action should balance out and adjust to that very shortly here. VVIX still pulling downward, exactly what we want to be seeing. So I'm, still holding my calls. I'm not getting shooken out of those. And I did add to the Soxus 10 puts for this week and next week. So we are just waiting for some of this price action to land. Now, it's a little difficult of a day when we have semiconductors being somewhat bearish while we have, QQQ doing really, really well. I'll look at Bitcoin too, because even though I don't care about Bitcoin too much right now, Bitcoin's still important to keep watch of because it's such a majorly owned institutional security at this point that they do try to trade Bitcoin a lot like how they'll trade the rest of the equities for the day. So if we're going to continue seeing selling within Bitcoin, that's kind of alluding that we could see continued selling within our equities. Nvidia is still looking super good. NXPI is a major buying opportunity here. Hold up. Yeah, that's a very nice cup. From that cup, we have the bearish structure at the top, which we anticipate. And from that bearish structure, we expect a handle to the upside. So NXPI has a lot of room to run right now. Check Qualcomm and everything. Qualcomm still sharing that multiple cup setup there. QQQ pushing highs of the day. And let's check semiconductors, still not doing its thing. Hurry up and do your thing. Go to the upside. Or I'll put the arrow there. I'll make sure it aligns perfectly so that our move can happen. It'll start moving now, don't worry guys. The reason why the 735 call 0DT is dropping is because of the theta. Okay, so within options there's many Greeks, and it's very important to understand kind of how they all work, even at the most basic level. Um, but the theta is going to be working against you the entire day. Okay. What this is telling you is that once the market opened today, we only have X amount of time until that contract is either within strike or out of the money. Now, currently, with your call being out of the money, um, the theta will burn that price downward. Okay, even if that call's very likely going to hit within the money and absolutely print. The theta will work against it as long as we're below that price. And if the price does not continue pushing upward, say you hit that 735 and price kind of just hovers around that for the rest of the day, a lot of the other Greeks will start kicking in too, not just theta. So you'll have reduced IV, um, the delta will slowly start ticking down and that contract will be worth less. So, um, I didn't say worthless, worth less. So just be aware of that. Contracts are very sensitive to many different factors. VVIX still pulling down. This is telling us that we will be seeing buying. We just need to see our semiconductors doing it, but ever since I drew the arrow and said it would move up, it's been moving up, so let's keep that going. How's everybody's morning going so far? And how do I know if a cup is invalidated? That's a really good question. So let's let's make this really easy. Let me get okay, so we're gonna use Soxel here for the example. So we have this very nice bullish cup here. Okay. Now this cup is still very much in play. Um, even though we have a lot of price action hanging pretty low, and this looks like, wow, that's some absurd handle to this cup, right? A lot of this is pre-market action, and we also have a smaller cup here that was invalidated. So how do we know when the cup's invalidated? If the bottom is broken. Bottom of this cup was broken out. This means that this cup right here is no longer a cup, okay? This is no longer bullish liquidity. The dealers will not use that as bullish liquidity, and instead, very likely, they're using this double top as liquidity for, further downside. Now, for this cup, as long as we don't break the bottom, then this cup is holding very strong. If we head down and break the bottom though, then that invalidates the cup And usually with a cup invalidation, you have the opposite occur. You generally have that inverse cup play out. So this is why I specifically look for cups, both the inverse and the standard. Um, they're very telling of what's going to be happening with the price action. Semiconductors still buying upward ever since I drew that arrow. Good. Needs to continue. Same with the SPY and everything. Draw more up arrows, right? I know ever since I said that arrow was gonna make the price go up, it's been going. Now for success, what we're looking for here, basically that same range as yesterday. We're looking for a new low, and that new low would push us into basically that 90, or excuse me, that 921 range, which for our semiconductor puts would be very, very, very nice. Again, this is a 3x leveraged ETF, so shorting it is, you know, going long within semiconductors. NVIDIA absolutely blasting off, and I like keeping this note here because we 100% talked about this multiple days now. Um, so that's going great. QQQ finished this smaller cup that we talked about. With this smaller cup being finished, we should be anticipating some bearish structure here. So don't get shaken out of your calls, but do expect some downside within QQQ. Within SPY, more just filling out of this cup. So this is starting to look really nice. If we can continue seeing this cup fill out, then that's going to be very good. From that cup filling out, we would expect some bearish structure again to continue heading upward. So that's what we're kind of contending with on the SPY. I want to look at HIG and the VVIX again. VVIX still doing its thing. That's perfect. And the HIG, where are you? Okay, and we are seeing a little bit of buying within the actual price this time. I mean, I've been seeing massive share buys all morning. 15,000 share buy, 9,700 share buy, 7,000 share buy, 3,000 share buy, 3,000 share buy. Yeah, I mean, massive, massive buys coming into HIG right now. 5,000 shares, 4,000 shares. So, um, no, those aren't just people buying call options or anything. HIG is largely equity traded. So, um, usually when you see massive buying like this is very, very indicative of the overall equity market wanting that upside. So, stocks here, semiconductors, building not just a cup, but a handle. This handle is also a nested cup, meaning we should be expecting a handle from that to continue pushing to the upside. Now, if you're astute, then you will see that we are building inverse head and shoulders liquidity. It looks wonky, but the liquidity is there. Okay, we have quality liquidity structure. We have a targeted quality liquidity structure aiming for that level. This is basically telling us inverse head and shoulders. May not look perfect, but you know, what's perfect? We're all different in some way, right? Um, but this inverse head and shoulders will work to complete this cup up to the 503.52. From that 503.52, basically we're expecting an additional candle and voila, that's how it works. So plenty of upside today. Very likely we bought the bottom of semiconductors again, twice in a row, which I have to say it's awesome. The last few days have been absolutely killer. April was a really difficult month for me because I broke my hand and I had to spend a week in the hospital. So I was basically out of commission that whole month. I had a hard cast on and everything, so it made it hard to draw on the screen, made it hard to hold my phone, made it hard to trade. Um, but I'm back, so for the upper Bollinger on SPY, okay, and that's actually a really good question. Now, hold on, let me go to the 30-minute time frame. So for SPY, okay, SPY has not pushed its upper Bollinger day one as of yet, okay. I thought I was gonna push that yesterday, but it got very close and stave that level off a little bit. Now, what that means is that the upper Bollinger and lower Bollinger come with a very specific and unique mechanic that I have no clue how I really figured it out. But I figured it out, and it has been back tested. It works very consistently. Day one of the upper Bollinger, you secure the upper Bollinger. So for us on SPY, that means that we would be closing above the 738. Okay. Um, I mean that's specifically what that rule is stating is that we will be closing at or above that level for the day one. Okay, so day one, that's telling us, okay, if we're going to be taking that move, we have a whole $4 of upside here. Um, that's what I'm looking for out of my 0DTs here, is for that upper Bollinger. But upper Bollinger mechanics come with a day two higher high. So that's why I had us take the TQQQ calls and some of those other dated calls to the upside because from this 738 range roughly, we should basically be expecting 742 give or take come, tomorrow slash Friday. So that's how I'm seeing the price action here. We have just absurd upside right now, which BVIX should be defeated today. I really want to see this well below this 92 range. Um, Circle back to the HIG. Also, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining in. It's nice to see you all. But let's go back to the HIG here because I want to see buying within the HIG still. Have a few shares being sold, but not much. Looks like the same firm doing it. You have two share sales being 1,247 shares each, all during the same time frame. So likely that was a firm. Now, liquid, I really am expecting it to start heading back up towards this 110 range today. Microsoft, we should be expecting basically to pull down to the 20 mile here, which is at the, excuse me, can't talk, which is at the 421.67. From that 421.67, it should create the bottom of this handle to give us our bounce to the upside. QQQ, again, we're expecting bearish structure here, so we do have some room to the downside. Semiconductors still working on filling that cup out, and SPY actually building a smaller cup and handle here. So as you can see, there's the cup, and now we're forming the handle, which again should create this larger cup back up to this 735.33. So yeah, that is looking good. Everything's looking good. I want to look at drip. I'm so excited about this. We're gonna hit above $5 today. Let's look at VPIX. Another leg downward, so it is at the 92.40. So, well, 92.39, even better. So a lot of signals are telling us that we're going to be seeing this upward buying in the day. Good morning, Ruben. So after the day two upper Bollinger, yes, usually you do see that downward consolidation. Um, Let me just go to a really solid example here. Even though this one was extended into a day three upper Bollinger move, which can happen, but it's more rare. That's actually what I'm expecting to happen out of semiconductors this week, is for us to have a day three upper Bollinger move. But day three, you just basically trade it the exact same way as day two. You expect a higher high into downward consolidation. So upper Bollinger day one, we secured the level. Upper Bollinger day two gave us that higher high. And then we did have that upper Bollinger day three, which did give us the higher high into the downward consolidation, which the first target here is always the 5 mall, okay, on the daily time frame. So when we were at the 686.15, the 5 mall was at that 680 range. So we pulled down from the upper Bollinger into the 5 mall. From that 5 mall, had 5 mall retest, and either the 5 mile retest will pull you back up into the upper Bollinger, or you start to head down towards the 20 mile. In this situation, market went to the 20 mile. So it's a very consistent move. You can literally look at almost any chart and see this exact pattern up in here. Have the exact same thing. Day one, buy. Give me 1 second, everybody. All right, I am back. So that's a good question. You wrote, I'm new to trading. I heard the best way to find good stocks is to look for which stocks have the most rocket emojis in Webull. Um, no. What you want to do is you really want to look at the top indexes. So let's just do this while we're on stream. What are some of the top traded things out there? Um, you can Google it, you can GPT it, but we know that the S&P 500 is, one of the most actively traded funds in the world. Okay. Now let me see financials. I know how to do this on the phone, but I don't know how to do this on the computer. So just give me a second. On. Okay, can you do this for the spy at least? I'll have to figure out how to show it on stream, but there is a way on the phone, and we'll just go over that really quick. But over the phone, you can go into a fund. So say, let's go into SPY. You hover over to the fund, asset allocation, and then look at the top 10 holdings. Add those to a watch list. Do the same with some of these other really big names. So, like stocks, for example, that's semiconductors. Well, if you want to add, top semiconductors, you go into their financials, look at or go into the fund, look at the asset allocation, and it'll tell you exactly what the top 10 funds are. And you can do this throughout, the Dow Jones, you can do this through the SPACs, S&P, QQQ, SOX, um, IWM. A lot of these big ETFs are going to tell you their top 10 holdings. I mean, they have to. Um, Start making a watch list with all of the top 10 holdings. And that's going to start giving you a really good reading of the overall market. Now, will it give you access to all those fun little squeeze stocks and everything? Not really. Um, but that's not really what I try to target at all. Um, I will play smaller stocks, but I'm not really looking for those little small cap squeezes anymore. Kind of past that in my life at this point. Um, those take a lot of time. Those take a lot of literally watching your phone, watching every candle, dealing with a lot of BS narratives, and just I don't like it. So I stick to the big stuff. Um, but there's nothing wrong with trading the small stuff either. So don't assume I'm judging you or anything. All right, everybody. So our trade should be going pretty good so far. Yes, I am slightly down in the spy calls, but that's pretty much the only thing I'm down in right now. Hold on. Slightly down in the socks as 10 puts, but those will recover weight. I'm not concerned about that literally at all. So we're just waiting for semiconductors to give us the weight on the day, which again, I'm expecting this to be fully green by the end of the day. I expect this to be basically at that 509 plus range. Okay, hold on. US sources, current negotiations between Washington and Tehran are the closest to ending the war. So, awesome news. Awesome news. That is super good for our drip position. Okay. Let's go ahead and check drip here. Should be getting close to that $5 range any moment now. Yeah, so all of the calls in probably a few minutes here are going to be running into the money, which that's awesome for us because we still have a full like 2 months plus the December calls, so we're going to be making a lot of money on this one. I'm very excited about that. Sorry if it sounds like I'm shivering. My room is so cold right now. Our success puts are almost in the money. Again, I was targeting very heavily the 10 puts. Um, I do have some of the 9 puts as well, just in case we get that move downward that I'm expecting. But the 10 puts are going to be running into the money extremely, extremely soon. I know, I'm so excited about drip right now. It's so hard not to just look at it and smile, but it hasn't even started yet. That's the cool thing with drip is that it hasn't even started, and I'm up immensely. Um, yeah, I have a absolute boatload of drip shares going. So, my average on those are 440, yeah, $4.40. And then the calls, I have an average of 32. Currently they are at 43. So I wish I bought more of the calls when they're at like the $12, $15 range, but at that point, I already have 82 of them. I don't really need to add more. Semiconductors, working on finishing this smaller cup to the 503 that we talked about. QQQ still just absolutely blasting today. Hit the 700 finally, which is just so absurd to see. I mean, I remember when QQQ was trading at $90 a share. Um, that was without a split or anything years and years ago. So our Soxus puts are now in the money, or basically neutral in terms of the price. They will be in the money any second. Today's going to be a pretty relaxed and chill trading day. Um, if you entered calls this morning, like we talked about, then you're pretty much just sitting and waiting for bulls to just go nuts. There's no better way to really put that is that we're just waiting for the bulls to do their thing. Um, we're in all the positions we need to be in, and we're seeing, a lot of the signals that we're truly wanting to see. We're seeing the VVIX continuing to pull downward. The only thing that I dislike here is that the HIG hasn't been pushed above that 80-20 range yet. I can circle back to it. Excuse me, I'm not trying to yawn in the mic. It's at 80-16 currently. I do want to see this pushing basically to above that 80-33 range today. Now, I might take a 5-minute break here just to drink some coffee really quick because again, I haven't slept all night. Um, as the vet in our group says, his name's Sparky, but says I was on Firewatch all night, so our TQQQ calls are absolutely blasting. Everybody should still be holding their 71 calls from yesterday. Yeah, having a very good day so far. Hopefully everyone's having a great day. Hopefully I've been somewhat leading the charge fairly well here. Oh, Yoso has a super nice inverse cup and handle forming. Well below support too. And I can finally delete this disgusting inverse head and shoulders that I was targeting. Get that off my screen. Then we have this very nice inverse cup and handle. So oil should be heading down massively. It does have to build liquidity just the same way it did on the way upward. Um, Oil won't just instantly sell downward, I don't think. Semiconductors doing their thing after having that bounce out of that dangerous liquidity range. So that's looking very, very good. Yeah, everything's looking great so far. How'd I break my hand? I was working on my car and the stick in the hood snapped, so not proud of it. It's like the most stupid way for it to happen. So we target the puts on the SPY always at the upper Bollinger. Now, we did target some puts in this range, which we were able to actually have them pay off, because again, from that, we target the 5 mall. So we had the upper Bollinger go to the 5 mall, and then it started to push back up and consolidate. Now, with this upper Bollinger push very, very likely going to happen today. Um, Not today, but tomorrow with that higher high of the day two, that's when you start tacking on puts. And the reason why is because either we're going to, I wish I didn't have all those drawings right now, but either we're going to head to the 5 mall and have that retest and then head back upward, or we're going to start having that 20 mall retest. Now, the thing about the moving averages is that they're basically clocks. So when you have the 5 mall, that's saying 5 iterations of whatever time frame you're on. So if we're on the daily time frame, we're at targeting the 5 mall, that's saying 5 trading iterations. Okay, 5 trading days. Well, what's that telling us about the 20 mall? Is that every 20 trading days, just about on average, we should be seeing that level. Okay, so let's count literally how long has it been since we've seen the last 20 mall retest, which it was this Wednesday, because I remember that very specifically. We gapped upward and then had the massive, massive bull push. So it was that Wednesday, so April 7th. So literally a whole month since then. Um, we're very much due for a 20 mall retest to occur. It's up to you when you want to sell on the zero DT, but again, there's tons of bull structure on the day. The upside is absolutely huge. So that's what I'm looking for. Now I am going to take just a couple minute break just because I need to drink some coffee and everything because I'm starting to feel nauseous. So just give me like 5 minutes, everybody. I'm going to write a little note that I'll be AFK, but um, our positions are looking great. You don't have to really stress about too much right now. The upside is still a whole $3 away. Okay. Um, we're really targeting that 378 today. So ideally, you do want to try to keep your calls for that level. And awesome. Did our stocks finally hit in the money? Yes, it did. Nice. Good, good. Okay. So a lot of great things happening. Um, Let me go ahead and write a note and just going to delete some of this prior structure because it's being invalidated. I like keeping this circled because we know when we entered and where our target of the day is. So I'm going to write a little note and then I'm going to take like a 5-minute break so I don't end up throwing up on stream. Time is it? It is 10:40. Well, 7:40 for me, but 10:40, so I will be back at 10:46. Okay, everybody, coffee break. Go take a relaxer, or if you're at work, I apologize. But I'll be back in like 5 minutes. All right, I am back, everybody. Okay, so our spy calls are kicking butt. VIX did pull upward very, very slightly, or the VVIX. It was at the 92.26. However, we do have this small inverse cup here. With that small inverse cup, able to handle downward. So we should be expecting a little bit of chop in there prior to the full move to the upside today. And this also coincides with this larger cup being completed here. We should be seeing a little bit of bearish structure, which means that this is a great opportunity to actually start getting ready to sell those 0DT calls. Um, if you plan to reload them, okay, which means that very likely we'd end up selling back down towards this uh 735 range, 734 range, excuse me, and then head back upward to that 738. For me, I'm just going to be holding my calls though. I'm not going to try to extract additional profit just because I do have to get up in a couple minutes here to um, get my daughter in the car and everything. She has school, but that is a trade that can be done. Okay. Um, and again, if you're to short that, wait for the upper Bollinger on the 5 minute to hit, and then you just simply take it to the 20 mile. That's always a very, very safe, consistent trade and pretty much free money. So, um, that's available on the SPY here. Very likely it's going to happen just because we saw that uptick in the VVIX. And I want to look at, excuse me, I want to look at the HIG again. So the HIG's still chopping in here. Um, I really do want to see a major price action change to the upside, because we have been seeing large share buys today, um, versus almost zero large sales on the shares. So, really waiting for that to play out. Nvidia hit well above our 211 range, hit all the way to the 214.20. So that has a little bit of room to cool down. QQQ again with the top of that cup being pushed. There's some room to cool down as well. So this is all alluding to that SPY should be seeing that slight pull down. Okay, we should be seeing that pull down to the 20 mile. From that 20 mile pull down, that should be a very quality loading opportunity for additional calls to the upside. BVIX having a slight tick upward here, so that's all really telling us that we should be expecting that handle to occur on SPY. And we have this cup built on semiconductors. With this cup being built here, excuse me, we now have handle being built. So with that handle being built, and we're still targeting the upside, um, but we do expect some downside prior to that. With this being at the 20 mile and the 5 minute time frame, I'm really not expecting too much further downside from here. Um, if anything, we might just retest this 20 mile range while the SPY and QQQ form a handle on their cups for us to continue heading upward to the upside. But the upside today looks very strong. Again, kind of the only thing really throwing me for a loop is that we haven't seen HIG have a massive buy to the upside. Um, we do have a large, We do have a large share sale here with almost 70,000 shares. Um, that just happened on Hig, so have to be aware of that. But again, we still had over 550,000 shares being bought today from one or two big dealers. Okay, everybody, just give me a couple minutes, cause I want to go say bye to my daughter and everything. Um, but this should be the expectation. Small pull down in the handle into push into the upper Bollinger. So I'm gonna write that. All right, everybody, I'll be back in just be like 5 minutes. But that's the expectation. Daily upper Bollinger. Let me go ahead and track this right here so it's a little easier to see. And I will be right back. I'm back, everybody. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm gonna keep the expectations up here, but just removing the I will be back because here I am. Um, let's go over everything really quick. And you're very welcome. I will be streaming Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays from basically that 9:15 until about 11, 12, depending on, how everything's going. And I will eventually be doing classes in the afternoons on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Those will be much later in the evening, and I still want to finish writing the curriculum and everything before I fully start having people sign up for classes and everything. But those will be Tuesdays and Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, if you can't join the classes live, then they will be saved in a VOD format to watch for later. So that's kind of what I got going on right now. Something else I'm working on for the team as well, which I'm working with one of our members. His name is Salty Burrito. Um, but we're working on an AI that will follow a lot of my very, very, very strict stock picking rules, to be able to buy the absolute bottoms or to, sell very, very close to the absolute highs. Um, extremely complex system. It's taking a lot of correlating. Um, we're having to write a whole ton of different correlations within it that the AI is going to have to follow to a T. Um, that will be coming to the server in roughly 2 months. So that's going to be a super nice tool because I believe it was you or someone else who asked earlier, how do I pick stocks? Well, I know you can't see my watch list. Let me actually just pull it up really quick. Let me just move this over. It's not going to show all the names on it, but just kind of look at how many. Okay, so yeah, top corner here. It's not going to show on your guys' screen, but my primary watch list has 191 stocks in it. Okay. Um, that's already very, I don't want to say hard, um, but it is a task to fully be on top of each and every one of them. Um, and in fact, as a human, it's impossible to do so. So what the whole goal of the AI is that it's going to be able to basically scan the totality of the market, find every single symbol that meets the exact super super specific criteria that I'm looking for to either go long in or to short. So that's what that will be for. I'm super excited about it because even for me, that's going to be a super nice tool just because I can't go through thousands of stocks each and every day, um, and track their levels and everything. But this AI can. So yes, yes, Jackson, that's where you're going to be looking for. Let me go ahead and pull this up, and I want to show you something in the 1 minute time frame too. So remember how we said at the top of this cup we were looking for bearish structure? This is probably one of the best examples I've seen in terms of just being able to stream it live. But at the top of this cup, we have an almost perfect head and shoulders on the 1 minute time frame. Okay. What this is telling us is that on the 1 minute time frame, that's structure for the 5 minute time frame to have our pull down to the 20 mile. Again, the 20 miles at the 734.84. So roughly that 734.84 to 735 range is going to be when you exit those puts, re-enter the calls. even if you push down slightly below that, it's not like we're going to go all the way to the 20 mile to the lower Bollinger. I don't think that's the case today. Um, I'll just double check the VVIX and everything to ensure that. But even with the VVIX here, this is telling us that we're at the 20 mile. Very likely we come see the rejection that we're looking for already. So, a couple different things showing us that we're getting ready to see that um that pull down and rejection in volatility, which will um give us the upside in overall equities. Now, pig still concerning, okay? It did buy up to the 80.19. However, it has been slowly dropping. Um, it's very important we see the HIG buying upward today, because if the HIG is not buying upward, then that's really, really alluding to some form of top end echelon selling. Because you have to remember, when it comes to the HIG and liquid, those are the investment grade corporate bond ETF and the high yield corporate bond ETF, or the corporate grade anyway. Um, these are usually only traded by big, big, big money. I mean, these are owned by BlackRock. They're pretty much traded by the biggest money. Um, with that said, that means that these are pretty much like the top tiers and top echelons of equity risk. Okay. If we're seeing the top risk being sold off, that's telling us that very likely we're going to see some sort of selling within equities. It's not always the case. Sometimes there's conditions where there's the necessity to sell the top end treasuries, which, that's bonds, treasuries, you know what I mean? Um, while still retaining the equity hold. Okay. So can be a little confusing, but overall, you should be looking at HIG as an indicator where if you see selling, that's really alluding to selling within the overall market. Yes, the AI tool will have a cost. I'm still working on a price for it, but I'm really thinking around that $59 a month. And I know that might seem unreasonable, but my rules are very, very, very specific on how I pick stocks, and I've been doing this for years and years and years. I mean, I've been posting, I started posting back in Reddit back in 2021. Um, if you're in the group, Sparky, Sadis, and I have been trading for literally years and years and years together. Um, since those posts, since the Weeble posts, since the Discord posts and everything, I've called the bottom of hundreds of very, very, very good stocks. I called the bottom of Micron, called the bottom of Tesla, called the bottom of, you know, many stocks throughout the years. And if I listened to my own picks, I'd be a millionaire right now. But because I'm human and I have emotions and stuff, I haven't always listened to my picks. And because of it, I'm not a millionaire yet. But um the stock AI will pay itself off very quickly. That's what I'm trying to allude to, is that um paying that 59 a month is literally going to be paying itself off if you pay attention and use it properly. Um, Starting to see a little bit of bull structure here at the bottom of this potential handle on semiconductors. We do have a double bottom. And another thing I wanted to throw in with kind of the pricing on that. So how I'll be doing it is that not only do you get access to the AI and everything, but that gets access to like the personal chats with me, that gets access to the classes. So you'll have access to all the class VODs, being able to join those live. Um, Eventually I am writing a book and everything. Everybody that is signed up for the 59 will be receiving a copy of that book. So, that's just some of the things that I can offer, but that's still months away. So don't worry about that right now. But um, I do plan to offer a lot with that, just not just the AI. So on this Head and Shoulders, which usually on Head and Shoulders, you will see kind of this occur. You usually will see sort of this inverse cup and handle start to form. Usually that's how that right shoulder occurs. Now, with this smaller nested inverse cup being the handle of this larger cup, potentially we can be forming an additional handle to the downside. Okay. So that's something that would take us to that 20 mile range. Again, the 20 mile is at the 734.88. So if you're looking for the call reload, that's pretty much going to be the level on the day. But I do want to look at the VVIX and everything and just make sure that we're not going to end up getting trapped in any positions or anything. VVIX still at that 20 mile. I am expecting this to reject fairly soon here. If it doesn't, then what we do have to contend with is that we do have the upper Bollinger pulling down towards the the actual VVIX price currently. Um, so if we don't have a rejection at this 20 mile, we should see the price pull up slightly above that upper Bollinger. And from the upper Bollinger, just like any stock, that becomes a short. Well, a short within volatility means that volatility will go downward while the stock price moves up. So while this might look a little sketchy, I'm not really expecting a whole ton of downside selling. Um, this is telling us that yes, we potentially have a little bit, but not a ton. It's not like when the price was back here where the upper Bollinger's all the way up at the 93, almost 94 range, right? Because that was telling us that, okay, this day can still have a absolute boatload of selling still in it. Now, if the upper Bollinger starts to open up, say we start, continue having buying within the VVIX, then eventually this upper Bollinger will start expanding to the upside. Okay, and that's how you do get those upward expansions. Um, but again, I'm not expecting that. Um, the data for today is pretty much already done with. We're already seeing all of our levels throughout the majority of the market trying to work on claiming that upside. Now, I do want to look at the HIG. Again, the HIG is very, very concerning for me. Um, we do have a large uh, share sell here with 182,000 shares. But the thing that I'm wondering is that just make sure that we haven't invalidated things yet. So we haven't invalidated this cup, and I know many of you might be saying, oh, that's only a penny left from invalidating the level. When it comes to the HIG, every single penny matters. If this doesn't invalidate this cup down to the cent, then it can fully form the structure that we're looking for. And I've seen it happen many, 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 many times. So for the Hig, it has to invalidate to the cent. Okay. So for this cup, this micro cup again, to invalidate, we need to head to the basically the 807. Okay. Um, if that invalidates, however, we still have very large structure to rely on. Okay, we still have this very large cup built over the last few sessions. Um, yeah, built over the last couple sessions anyway. Still have that very large cup, and even if this smaller cup breaks here, this can still be a handle. Okay, so don't get too afraid if we see the Hig tick downward a little bit further. Um, if anything, that might just be alluding to us getting our dip within the SPY, which I haven't been watching. We might have already hit it. I'm not sure. Not yet. It's heading there though. So again, that's going to be the range that I really want to um engage further calls upon. Now, I did not short it just because I had to get my daughter in the car and everything and make sure she was all ready to go. But um this would have been a really nice short position. It's a smaller short position, but it's still a nice short position. Now, we're starting to hit this 20 mile range. Not there fully. We're only about 10 cents off though, so we're gonna hit it very soon. Um, from that 20 mile range, that becomes a very strong put exit, and it becomes a fairly quality call entry. Now again, the best call entries are going to be within the lower Bollinger, but do I think that's going to kick in today? I really don't. I think that we're barely going to touch this 20 mile level and fly pretty much the rest of the day. VVIX still holding this 92.50 range. So with this being close to the upper Bollinger here, with SPY getting ready to hit that range where we're expecting to sell our puts and re-enter calls, um, this is all looking very, very quality. This is looking very much so like either we're going to hit that upper Bollinger and reject, or reject through the 20 mile here. Yes, I'm still holding SPY calls. I'm looking very much so for this 738 level on the day. Um, earlier though, I would have exited if I was going to enter the puts, um, and take that put downside and everything. 20 mile has hit, so this is that level to exit those puts and enter the calls. So actually, I want to get into a couple more here. Now again, I'm just tacking on the 736 calls, not doing anything fancy. And then I'm also going to add just a couple more of these Soxas 10 puts because I do still fully believe we will be getting our move to the upside. Okay, and those should fill any moment here. Okay, got those filled, got my SPY calls filled. And what else do I want? I want to get a couple of these cheap Success 9 puts for tomorrow, just in case we hit the level, because those will go from like 3 cents all the way to, 60 something dollars. So, okay, I'm all ready to go. So, with all the calls purchased, let's go ahead and just double check everything. So, we should start expecting the VVIX to pull down now that we are within the upper Bollinger. Should start pulling down and giving us some of that equity strength that we're expecting throughout the SPY and QQQ whatnot. SPY having a little bit of a bounce, so hopefully we nailed that call purchase. Nvidia having a bounce. No, we do want to see HIG buying, which is very, very concerning that we pulled all the way down to the 8004. Um, Out of any of the signals today, this is the one that's really getting to me because we should not be seeing that selling. Um, and I talked about this earlier with Bitcoin, that with Bitcoin selling, this could also allude to selling within equities. So we have to be very cautious of that as well. Um, However, I really do think that Bitcoin will start being bought up here pretty soon, just based off of it pushing the lower Bollinger for the majority of the session so far. And QQQ looks like it's getting ready to start having that bounce to the upside. And it is forming bullish structure. So we have beginnings of, delete some of this, we have the beginnings of an inverse head and shoulders. And we're also working on closing a smaller cup. Okay, so from that smaller cup, should be expecting a handle back up to the upside. So let's check SPY. SPY is heading back upward. Sorry, I didn't mean to knock my mic. If we continue seeing buying, which we're only 30 cents away from that level, we will complete a cup here, which that will start invalidating that larger head and shoulders. From that cup completing, look for a handle, and we should be off to the races. Um, and also with that said, I want to turn off the Bollingers here, but we also have this inverse head and shoulders forming on SPY as well. So I think we nailed our entry and exit on everything today. Um, I really try not to say that from like an egotistical point of view. Um, the more you get to watch me, hopefully you'll understand that I'm not that type of person. But it is very nice when we do perfectly hit our entries, and we've been doing that almost every single stream. Um, Again, the trading that I do is very, very, very systematic. Um, So if you are a new trader, you are in the right spot, okay? Um, I've had to lose literally hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to the point of where I am comfortable, okay? Where I know exactly what I'm doing. Um, so hopefully this isn't being seen from an egotistical point of view. So when the time comes, I will set up the Discord subscription for that. Now, here's kind of a caveat to that. If you sign up for the current 12.99 sub that I have in the Discord through the Patreon, um, you will be grandfathered into that $59 a month sub. If you do the yearly one and you basically continue holding up that program, you'll be able to when I do launch that tool in about 2 months, when I do fully launch the classes, which again is about a month because I have to finish writing the curriculum, you'll have access to all of that. So um, that price does get grandfathered in. So just something to consider. Not that I'm trying to sell you guys, but if you're wanting it really cheap, um, kind of the time to get that basic supporter. Um, make sure it's the year one. Okay, it has to be the yearly, and you will be grandfathered into the price change when we actually do change the price. So, um, just want to throw that out there. Thank you. Yeah, it's taken a really long time to get to the point where I feel very comfortable in the market. I feel very, you know, at peace with the price action. I don't get stressed out. Just takes time. Um, and I think that's probably the hardest part for the market for many people is that it takes an incredible amount of time, takes an incredible amount of patience, takes, you know, unfortunately, sometimes losing a lot of money to learn these lessons. Um, but we're all in this together and we do have a big group. Um, they don't all join the stream obviously, but um that group will just continue growing and growing and growing. And the reason why I even stream and teach and everything is because I really do want to open up a trading school. Um, and not one of those stupid group programs. I'm talking like actually going out and buying an army base or something and creating a trading college. That's kind of my end game goal for this all. So big is still very, very, very concerning here. And I want to look at the VVIX. We are starting to see a little bit of a rejection from that upper Bollinger, which that was something we talked about. Now, from that upper Bollinger rejection, because very likely it's going to fully reject into the 20 mile, we need to make sure that it doesn't have a bounce off of that level back upward. Instead, it needs to continue heading, excuse me, it needs to continue heading downward. So, um, that's something we really do need to see out of the VVIX here. Um, and it's a little concerning, especially when with the HIG, we are not seeing the buying within the HIG that we really, really need to be seeing. Um, in fact, we can go ahead and delete that because it has somewhat invalidated that, but it hasn't invalidated the overall larger cup. So I'm not worried about that, and I'm not worried about that actually even occurring. For that to occur within HIG would be very, very large price action. But we're still seeing plenty of buying within our equities. And one thing that Here's kind of another caveat to HIG as well is that it does base its spreads around what is happening with the US Treasuries. So when we see TLT being red on the day, even if we're going to be seeing buying within equities and whatnot, because the spread between TLT and HIG needs to basically be held at a certain level in a certain range, that means that HIG could be selling off even if there is major buying into the ETF. I know that part doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but treasury spread or yield spreads have to maintain their weight very, very, very specifically. When it comes to bond traders, every single percentage point matters, and this is a treasury type instrument. Um, so it does follow what is happening with TLT and whatnot. So that is something we do have to have in the back of our minds as well, is that this may not be exactly selling within the HIG. It might just be following the yield spread. Um, but that's kind of impossible for us to fully determine in the moment. So we do have to look at this as potentially this is selling into the market. Okay. Hey, it's nice to see you. So my background, I used to be a game developer. Um, I did that for quite a many years, and I'm not going to talk about the game because I didn't leave on good terms. The owner did me really wrong when my daughter was born. So not going to bring him up. But I was a game developer. I taught myself how to code. Uh, for that, I was working in the fuel industry. I would drive some of the trucks and ship some of the fuel to the local stations. Um, but I didn't come from a background of massive schooling or anything. I did go to WSU, Washington State University for business, but I didn't learn macroeconomics. I didn't learn all the stuff that I know now. Um, all this stuff I had to learn on my own. Um, how I lit that fire underneath me to do so, I really have no clue because I never really expected myself to be the person to be in the financial world like this. Um, I mean, I'm at the point where I'm tracking almost what every single central bank is doing and just, knowing exactly what's going on throughout the world. So, I never really expected that out of my life, but, you know, life can lead you to odd places sometimes. Big is concerning me massively here. I'm becoming very, very, very concerned, while we're seeing Big continuing to sell. And again, that can be because of the TLT spread pulling downward, but um, I'm not attributing that to that at all. What's happening with oil? Oil is going up a little bit. BVIX still hovering at that upper Bollinger, starting to pull away a little bit. Um, which obviously that's a very good signal for us. But we want to see some real strength in this pull down. Again, we really do want to see this pulled below the 92 range today. Um, that's going to be telling us, you know, basically to the T if we're going to see that rally that we're really expecting or not. Now, within semiconductors here, when we nailed that entry, which I still think we nailed, it's looking like that across the board, even between SPY and everything. We still have this very nice cup and handle built. Um, this is, telling us almost to the T that we're going to head back up to this 503.60. But the Hig is absolutely terrifying me. Let me tell you. Um, this is making my skin crawl a little bit here. Okay. It's very hard to be bullish when we see the Hig selling. Um, because again, you have to remember the thing about the Hig is that it is pretty much used by the biggest money out there. Um, this is not retail buying and sharing these sell or these shares. This is not smaller institutions doing that. This is generally the biggest money. So why would the biggest money be selling when we're seeing equities running? So it's a very conflicting signal to me. It brings me a ton of just have to be super cautious of that. Even on the smaller time frame, we're seeing inverse head and shoulders and this cup forming. So the equity buying is looking very, very nicely. It's just we really do need to see our HIG pulling up, and we really do need to be seeing our VVIX pulling down very, very massively. Yes, I did. I added a bunch of the 9 puts for tomorrow, just in case we truly hit our price. Um, will they run in the money? I don't think so. I think we might get to that, you know, basically this 920-ish range. That's really what I'm expecting out of this whole push for success. Again, those success puts, for those who just joined, are essentially semiconductor calls. This would be the same as taking like a call on Soxel or taking a call on Sox. Instead, you're just shorting the bare ETF version of it. So, um, I'm expecting this to pull down towards that 920-ish range. Okay. We're seeing Higgs starting to taper away from this lower Bollinger, which, in our defense, on a good note, okay, lower Bollinger is always kind of the entry for the long side. Long being, expecting upside, call side, however you want to, you know, describe it. But with this being at the lower Bollinger, this has created the conditions that we can start buying to the upside. Which that's what we're looking for, We're looking for real conviction in the buying here. So if we can see our big move upward, and if we can get our VVIX moving downward, then that 738 should be pretty locked in. And we're also starting to see some buying on Bitcoin, which again, it doesn't always run one to one, but usually if you're going to be seeing buying on Bitcoin, usually that translates into buying within equities, because this is no longer some decentralized security. This is pretty much like 99% institutionally owned now. So um, it moves a lot like the equities are going to move. Now, until we see the HIG and the VVIX move, we should be pretty much just expecting chop. Okay. Potentially some bearish structure in here, but that can be invalidated with just a tiny bit of upside buying, but we'll see. Has not invalidated our inverse head and shoulders yet, but let's check HIG liquid. Again, we really do want to be seeing liquid and HIG buying upward. We're just seeing a lot of tapering on the downside to them. And our VVIX is really just hovering at that 92.75 range right now. So we need something to move. Let's check some of our actual stocks here. So Micron looked scary earlier, but I mean, I guess yesterday, not earlier so much. Um, we had this really nice cup built and very likely trying to form this handle. So we'll keep a watch on Micron, but extremely likely we see a lot of this weight pulled back on the day. We're seeing Microsoft building that cup and handle to the upside, so that's telling us that very, very likely Microsoft wants to break out as well. Not the easiest trading day, I'll tell you that. Probably an 8 out of 10 in terms of difficulty. PVIX still at the 92.74. I wish we would just get a massive candle in the HIG already, just so that I can already know for a fact that we're going to buy the upside or not. This is the only thing really kind of concerning me is that we have HIG selling. But within the time and it shares, if you watch it, and the way that I set it is I set it to where it tracks anything 999 shares or above. So ideally, it's only tracking the larger orders. Um, Throughout the most of the day, I've been seeing nothing but large buying orders. Besides, there was that 186,000 share sale, but there was still that 500 like 30, 550,000 share buy um compared to that. How do I get the real-time VVIX? There is something you had to pay for in Webull, which I believe is free right now. Let me remember how to get there. Hold on. It's market quotes. So it's the CGIF index. Um, I believe that's the one it is. Okay, so I'm just gonna look through everything here really quick. Still seeing selling in the HIG. Yes, that would be a very good place to average down on the calls. If we hit that lower Bollinger on the 5-minute time frame. Because ignoring all the drawings for a second, hitting that lower Bollinger here would still be above um, breaking this cup. So it would still be within full bullish structure. It just looks a little scary, but this is still a bullish structure here. Um, Hitting that lower Bollinger is currently at the 734.31, so you'd basically hit that 734 range. That would then give you the opportunity to buy the lower Bollinger potentially all the way back up to the high of the day. And again, buying the lower Bollingers is always when we take our calls, even if the price action looks sketchy. Um, it's just the range to buy your calls at. So I definitely agree with adding to the calls if we do push to that level. QQQ still holding bullish structure. And QQQ here as well, is pushed into the lower Bollinger, so that's showing that there is a buying opportunity to the upside there, at least within tech. But let's correlate that with semiconductors. So same with semiconductors here as well. Semiconductors are also giving us a buy to the upside within the calls. So that should correlate with the SPY having a bounce. This should correlate with a lot of the market having an upside bounce. Okay. Um, but let's look at the VVIX. So VVIX is pulling down slightly. May not seem like a whole lot yet, but it did go from the 92.85 down to the 92.71. And let's check our Pearl HIG 80.02. If this drops to 79, um, literally 79.99, then I'm gonna take the 80 calls for tomorrow. That's on the HIG because those would print very, very hard. So, and those calls would be, yeah, I mean those calls would run from basically about $5 to probably about 35, just for literally that 1 or 2 cent price difference. Once it hits in the money and starts running to the upside. Very large share buy, so 204,000 shares. So let's check our SPY and everything. EVIX still just holding that weight. I'm gonna need some more coffee in a minute, everybody, so I don't end up falling asleep on you guys. Semiconductors pushing down a little bit here. But the HIG is starting to buy upward. Okay, I'm starting to see a lot of shares being bought in here, so this to me is telling me that very likely this is that dip buy that we're looking for throughout the SPY, throughout QQQ, throughout semiconductors. Um, SPY is the only one not pushed into the lower Bollinger right now, but QQQ and semiconductors are. So, um, very, very solid buying opportunity. Now I'm gonna add the 736 calls here. Usually I would focus on the 20-mile level, but really expecting quite a lot out of today. So I'm going to be adding the 736 calls. And let's check our VVIX. Also want to check the news too, on the unusual whales. That's what we use for our news, just to make sure nothing crazy is going on. So we're not really seeing any news right now that's causing this. There was a message about Iran having shipped none of the enriched uranium out yet, which maybe that's the downside catalyst here. Because I want to look at USO. We are seeing USO having a little bit of buying off of that news. So that's likely what's causing some of this further downside. However, I still like buying calls into this though. Um, might seem crazy, but I do like buying calls into this. Again, the only thing that's kind of really shaking me here is the Hig being down. But even then, that's in the lower Bollinger, so I think the upside opportunity on the days is really starting to open up. Okay, so what we don't want to see is we don't want to see, hopefully, this cup invalidated, which is literally going to do it right as I drew that. Of course. Um, that's not the best, okay, because that invalidates this cup from earlier. That invalidates a lot of this structure. However, now we have the inverse cup formed, which also does give us a buying opportunity at the bottom. Because the bottom of an inverse cup, we expect bullish structure, back up to the upside. So as bearish as things might look, this is still call buying zone. And we still have this cup from earlier, which has not been invalidated. Again, this has to pull down all the way to the 732.77 to really, or excuse me, the 732.71 to fully invalidate this cup that was built in the overnight slash pre-market. So um, we will watch for that. BVIX is still holding that 92.75 range. Well, 92.76, but basically same range. Can delete some of this bullish structure, because unfortunately it has been broken out of. But we still have these cups formed on the day. We still had the top of this cup having the bearish structure that we expected. And if we can see, and if we can get the market to catch this selling, which I do believe they will do. I can be wrong about that, but I do believe they will. Then we should be seeing our upside. Now, the one thing we do have to contend with is, remember, the 5 mile is at this 626 range. It might be a little higher right now. Let me double check. At the 625.98, so basically 626. That means the upper bounds of the 5 mile is at the 628, while the lower bounds, or while the upper Bollinger is still at this 637. So we're about, $5, $6 above the 5 mile upper bounds, about a whole $9 above the level still, while we're still only $4 away from this upper Bollinger. So, from a dealer perspective, I look at this and I say, okay, which one's going to pay me more? Is it going to pay me more to completely just kill all these calls here and not run this? Or is it going to pay me more to buy out literally all these calls for next to nothing and then jump the market? For me, um, from how I see dealers move very, very often, they like to usually do that. Um, we have not been seeing the put interest going up massively today, which is telling me that not a lot of puts are being written. Okay. If there's not a lot of puts being written, then the selling shouldn't hold up very, very long. Now, another thing that I want to show is the ADL. So it's an indicator 99.99% of traders do not use that everybody should be using instead of their RSI and the MACD and everything. Um, the ADL is telling you the money volume essentially. So if it's pulling down, you can think about this like a bank account. That means funds are leaving the ETF. If money is going into it, then money is going into that symbol. Now, we're seeing a little bit of chop within our ADL, but it has pulled down way further earlier today, and so far it is pulling back up. Um, so just something to look at. Um, I've used that indicator for a very long time as sort of like a lie detector because it will tell you if the market is actually buying or selling um, compared to the actual equity, um, the price action on the equity anyway for that moment. IG is now within that range to start entering those calls. So I want to enter some of those calls. 1 second. Okay, and these are just going to be the 80 calls for Friday tomorrow. Buy a few. Let's try at 0.11. Okay, got the hit calls at 0.11. I only bought a few of them, not expecting a whole ton out of it so far, but okay. So let's look at our VVIX and SPY and everything. SPY pulling down, but has not validated the earlier structure of the day so far. We're still seeing oil pulling up, so it's very likely that uranium news was what is causing this. VVIX still basically holding that 92.70 range, or 75 range, excuse me. Now, I am still holding all of my calls here. Um, I know it looks a little sketchy. I do think a lot of this narrative can be changed very quickly, though. especially when Iran and USA are pretty much, as we speak, actively trying to work on getting peace agreements and everything done. So I am expecting buying on the day, as sketchy as it's starting to look, but it's not looking too sketchy to me so far. I mean, the VVIX has barely pulled up today. Um, it was at a low of 92.26, and then it legged up towards 92.60, pulled back down towards the 92.44, and then now we're at the 92.83. Um, yes, it's elevated, but it's technically yesterday we were seeing the VVIX pushing upward into the 93 into the close. Um, so I'm not super set on this being a selling day so far. Yeah, I know things look sketchy, but I still really like the calls today. Um, Again, from the dealer perspective, pushing into this upper Bollinger, um, would be the way to burn the market here. And let's talk about from just a standard point of view, being a retail trader, right? If we don't know all of our signals, today looks absolutely terrifying. Okay. We're seeing semiconductors down, I think, what, 2% right now? Semiconductors are down 2%. We're seeing a lot of selling through different equities. Um, we see the HIG down, we see Bitcoin down. A lot of different signals telling us that potentially the downside is really coming in. However, tomorrow is Friday. That's when, we have a lot of options expiring. Tomorrow's not an OPEX. OPEX will be next month, but it's essentially a small OPEX. There's, every Friday is it's kind of its own thing. Um, and again, from the dealer standpoint, we're only $5 away from this upper Bollinger compared to pushing down a whole. I mean, we have to push down nine plus dollars to reach that 5 mile. And that's going to be the levels that is going to be taken. Either we're going to take the upper Bollinger or we're going to be aiming to push to the 5 mile. Um, so that's just kind of what I'm considering, is that from a dealer perspective, they've built a ton of liquidity here. Why would you build this liquidity just to sell it off? It doesn't make sense. Um, I think that they're trying to shake people out of calls and eventually buy those calls up and you know basically moonshot this thing. VVIX pulling down very slightly. So it's at the 92.80, was at the 92.84. Not super indicative of anything yet. Way too soon to really tell. And for HIG, we are starting to see some buying, um, which is cool. I don't really expect our HIG calls to gain weight until later today slash tomorrow. So I'll release a message probably about 3 days before, for the grandfathering thing. Um, but correct. If you sign up for the 12.99, the basic supporter, um, for the year, you will be grandfathered into the price changes when they come. Which again, I'm really expecting early June for that to happen. Well, mid June, excuse me. So still a little bit away, but if you do want to support me a month earlier, that'd be cool. Doesn't matter to me though. If you want to save the money, save the money. Semiconductors still pushing down pretty hard here. But we did form this inverse cup. From this inverse cup, let's create conditions to start buying. It's really hard being bullish on a day like today. We have a little bit of this earlier cupping invalidated too, which is not good. That's not good at all. But it's not too bad either. We know that this is a very strong and important liquidity range. Check our VVIX again. We did have a leg upward a little bit, so it jumped up to the 92, 98. So there is definitely some dealer selling going on here, which we really do have to contend with here. Now that they're breaking some of these levels. Go back to the Hagen liquid. Hig pull down to 79, 97. But I'm still seeing massive share buys in here. Same here with liquid, seeing massive share buys. So it's starting to look pretty gnarly. On semiconductors, we could potentially be having this massive inverse cup forming. QQQ seeing a bit of selling too. I need to check the news here. See if we have some bad news from unusual wills or anything. Okay, so here's the news, I guess. This came out 40 minutes ago when I was fortunately taking care of my daughter. So Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson says Iran has not yet reached a conclusion on the proposal, and no response has been given to the U.S. Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson stated that Iran has not decided on a proposal. Okay, yes, and that Iran can outlast the Hormuz blockade for months. And then Iran imposes new rules for the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, and let's catch up to the current. Yeah, something that was posted in Unusual Whales. Investors have mixed reaction to Iran war. Stocks up as they anticipate high profits. Bonds like U.S. Treasuries face uncertainty, which that's kind of what we've been looking at all day. Is that the Hig has been really giving us struggles, and that's very very tied to U.S. Treasuries. While we've been seeing the overall equities doing pretty well until just recently. Now, there hasn't been any news as of right this moment that I'm seeing that's showing me that. Hold on. Yeah, I mean, I'm not seeing any new news yet, but we definitely can't ignore some of the selling. Okay. Um, but it's still really hard for me to be bearish today. Let me tell you. That might be an emotional bias, so we do have to contend with that. Um, Especially, this is something I'll just bring up really quick, even though we're trying to determine everything. When we notice that we're having an emotional bias, we need to identify that, um, because it can completely change how you're viewing the day. Okay. Um, Obviously I have a bullish bias on the day so far. And even with some of the selling we're seeing, even with some of the potentially bad price action, that could be clouding my vision a little bit. Okay. Um, which usually I try to be as unbiased as possible, but it's something we have to contend with. Um, we are human. It's very hard to see a lot of these big names buying upward, but yet the market isn't really taking that weight. VVIX is at the 93.29 now, so that's still gaining some weight. Trying to see if the market's trying to catch itself here or not. Because if it doesn't catch itself very soon, the downside's going to be pretty large. Okay. Now, I can't justify taking puts in the lower Bollinger. Um, just unfortunately, that's not how I trade. It doesn't matter what the sentiment is, I'll never take puts in the lower Bollinger. For me, this is still call buying opportunity as scary as the price action is. And the fact that we're not entirely breaking down to this 5 mall really, really for me is telling me that it's very likely the dealers are just trying to scoop everybody up here. I could be entirely wrong about that, um, but that's just what I'm seeing. I'm holding my calls. I'm holding my calls. Again, it looks sketchy, but let's talk about sketchy for a moment, okay? And let's just go to any stock. Here, I'll let you pick. Um, what stock would you like me to look over really quick? And yes, the Hig $80 calls, those are the ones that I'm taking. So I'm just gonna pick a random stock in here on my list. So da 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 da. Okay, RatNet. Haven't looked at you in literally years. So this is a great one to look at. Okay. What happens when we get to the lower Bollinger? And this is the 5 minute time frame. Just about every single time you get to that lower Bollinger, you see massive buying. Even if you push down further, get to the lower Bollinger, strike right there, lower Bollinger, hit. So hopefully I'm kind of proving the point of why I buy calls on the lower Bollinger. It's because the price action almost always supports it. It's very rare to. This is a perfect example of that rarity. Okay. If you tried to buy the calls right here, they would have been burnt. Okay. But the calls down here did absolutely great. Okay. Calls right here had a very great exit. So out of what, 15, 20 marks, we only have one bad exit in here or one bad entry. Let's do hood. Okay, great. Let's look at hood. So let's go back to what I'm expecting. So we'll just mark that out and we will check back on this later. It's not the best exit, but there was an exit there. Not the best exit, but there was an exit. So you can see that buying these lower Bollinger moves tends to pay. Now, there's this situation right here where there's this lower Bollinger move where if you bought this level, you would have seen the price pull up very slightly, pull back down to the lower Bollinger. You would have been out of strike very shortly, but this strike still would have attached to that same exit of this lower Bollinger move. So they both had the same exit, even though they had slightly different entries. But as you can see, um, buying the lower Bollinger is how you make money. If you're wanting to go long, buying the lower Bollinger, even in very sketchy situations, is how you make money. Okay. Um, yeah, I think we nailed the majority over the last couple days. But as you can see, buying the lower Bollinger pays out. Yeah, and it's very hard to get rid of those emotions because it's like you're human. How do you stop being human, right? Um, it just comes from consistently trading, consistently being in that, you know, scary situation, consistently being in that, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Well, after you learn how to do what needs to be done, then it's not so scary anymore. Um, think about it like driving a car. Um, when we were all first starting learning out driving cars. I mean, sure, some of us might have been less stressed out than others, but I'm sure we all had those situations where something came up where it was like, wow, what do I do right in this second? Um, or how could have I reacted to that better? And trading's a lot in the same way that you're going to experience a ton of situations that you have zero control over. I mean, as much as you can get the chart mapped out and learn the structures and everything else and know how structures perform and know how the charts perform and everything, at the end of the day, you can't control it. Um, unless you're some super billionaire, which if you're watching my stream and you got that type of money, help me out, man. But besides that, uh, you can't control the stocks. All you can do is best trade it to what you see available. And this is why a lot of people say stock trading is gambling, but I heavily disagree. What we're doing is not gambling. What we're doing is not trying to predict the future. We're simply looking at the price action and seeing what dealers are doing and how the market is trying to, move around what's going on and finding fair deals during that. Um, which is why we buy the bottom Bollinger. This is why we sell the upper Bollinger. Um, those are how you target those super deals. And let's go back to QQQ here. SPY's actually up a whole $2 since we've been talking about that lower Bollinger buy. Um, QQQ up a whole $3. Semiconductors up a whole $4. So, as sketchy as things get, buying that lower Bollinger is still where you make your money. Um, that's just consistently how it's done. When I teach people, like when I'm actually going through just day trading, scalping classes with people, that's exactly what I'm telling you to target. You basically go from either the lower Bollinger to the 20 ma or the upper Bollinger to the 20 ma. You make that, you know, your Bible. You make that your law. Um, you don't worry about sentiment, you don't worry about narrative. You just worry about what's going on within the actual price action and you take your positions accordingly. Waiting for a drop below the Bollinger, it can be the safer trade, but it's a trade that isn't always going to be open and isn't always going to be available. Um, Sometimes these Bollinger moves, you barely just touch the lower Bollinger and then you're off for the rest of the day. Um, and it's a little hard to see too because it's like look at this 5 minute chart on the SPY. When we were all the way up at the 734.31, we were already underneath that lower Bollinger. And it just kept pushing down and down and down. And it did that for a whole $3. Very rare. Okay. This is very rare to occur, but it can occur. Um, technically these buys in here were all very ideal and exactly what you're looking for. Um, it just happened to be so that we had some pretty bearish news with Iran, and that caused a lot further selling than anticipated, but we still bought the correct level. Okay, so in hindsight, it would have been great for us to wait all the way to the very bottom penny, but we don't have that. Um, in hindsight, what we do know is that anytime we push outside the bounds of the lower or upper Bollinger, usually that's your entry to go. You usually don't get a whole lot of time to engage after that. Um, so while it is rare, um, that can occur. And when this is occurring, usually this is telling me that a lot of this weight will be bought upward as well. Okay, because look at where the 20 mile is right now. All of the positions entered here will pay out at that 20 mile, even if it's neutral. Even if basically your contract ends up being just barely negative or worth basically zero. Well, I mean, not worth zero, but you're losing zero, gaining zero, basically selling it for the price you got it. Um, Technically, that's a winning trade there. Okay. Um, Most people cannot maneuver their contracts through that without absolutely just burning themselves. Okay. So with this, with our entries, we still look for our same exit. Okay. Even if it pushed below what we were looking for the entry. Um, the exit's still sticking here. Okay. The exit's still that 734.46. Um, all the contracts here will pay out there, whether it's slightly negative, whether you ended up buying the very bottom and having a massive win. It doesn't matter. This was still the proper entry, and it's still going to give us the proper exit. So hopefully that makes sense. And I know that was kind of a big spiel, but um, I think it's really important. I wait for it to specifically touch or push into the Bollinger. Sometimes it will only touch, and it does take a little bit of learning execution between all the stock prices. Um, for example, it's like when we're trading SPY, do I just sit here and look at SPY? No, you see me sitting here looking at what's going on with semiconductors. You see me looking at what's going on with volatility. And the whole goal of that is you're trying to be a detective. Okay, you're really trying to understand which way is the price going? Are we going up or down? Um, that's the whole story of the day. All this other stuff gets added on later. Okay. Um, but look at your different symbols. It's like QQQ. It's been super bullish most of the day. That's a very strong signal for us. We've seen HIG be very weak, but now it's starting to buy back upward again. So that's becoming a strong signal for us. So even if the SPY just barely tapped the bottom Bollinger, that would have still been a buy for me because I see a lot of upside throughout the overall market. We have the upper Bollinger not that far away from us. I personally think that semiconductors will be turning green on the day. Um, so that's kind of just some of the thought process of what I'm trying to think about when I do engage on a trade because it absolutely is terrible when you take a trade early. I get that. Um, but still taking that lower Bollinger level would have still paid. Um, again, even if the contract ends up basically netting you zero and you lose zero, that's still a win that I think like what 97% of traders can't even get that. Um, so take the wins that you can get. Um, and yeah, 5 minute Bollinger opened up. So here's something about the Bollingers, okay, and here's kind of how they work. I'm gonna turn off the drawings for a moment here. Um, but with the Bollingers, you see that our Bollinger settings are set to 20 and 2. Okay, so what's that 20? That 20 is tracking the 20 mall, 20 iteration. Okay, whether we're on the 5 minute time frame or the daily time frame, that's tracking that 20 mall. Now, what does that mean within the actual Bollingers themselves? If the 20 mile starts pulling downward, then we're going to see the downside expansion to the Bollingers. If we start seeing the 20 mile pulling upward, we're going to see the downside start curling up and the upside pulling up. which basically cuts off the downside, opens up the upside. Excuse me, can't talk. Um, and inversely, if the 20 mile is heading downward, it's going to open up that downside while cutting off the top side. Okay. So if we continue seeing price action to the downside, it's going to curve this Bollinger downward. Now, sometimes that could be a good thing for us because that creates the target being closer to be reached. But ideally, we want to be seeing our 20 wall moving upward. Um, but we won't be seeing the 20 wall moving upward until the price is actually above that level. Okay, so with our talking back with the calls again, we have to hit that 20 mile. Okay, we have to hit that 20 mile. Um, and if the Bollinger is going to expand into the daily upper Bollinger and everything, then we need our price action to continue above the 20 mile so that the 20 mile will start trailing the actual price action. So that's what we're looking for there. Now, I want to take a look at the VVIX and everything again. So VVIX still pushed into this upper Bollinger. Now slowly starting to pull back down. With that pulling down, again, I am kind of looking for a major rejection within volatility. I still think dealers are going to try to buy the day out and basically take calls from everybody. Um, whether that's just